Welcome to the Living Wholehearted podcast, where we're helping leaders live with integrity.
Whether you're a mom or a CEO, you're a leader, and how you lead matters.
Living wholehearted means we bring all of who we are to our God, our mind, our body, our heart, soul, and relationships.
We have a special guest today that lives this out. We're welcoming author, pastor, and founder of Theology and the Soul Space app, Bo Stern. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you guys today.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you, Bo.
Bo, before we dive in, tell us a little bit about the stage of life that you're in and finding yourself doing during this unique season.
This is a unique season, isn't it? It's really interesting. I am a 54-year-old newlywed, so it's been really an interesting time to kind of test a new marriage during a global pandemic. I recommend it. It's been great. It's been like lots of learning, all kinds of things about each other. It really has been awesome. We've had a great time, except for we're both kind of getting pretty antsy at this point. But, I'm spending my time writing a lot and trying to write without saying too much because I think there's a lot of noise in the world right now. So that's been a real trick for me to figure out where do all the voices belong when we're all stuck at home and we all have so much to say. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm a pastor at Westside Church, and I live between Bend and Beaverton, and it's good. It's a pretty cool life, but I'm ready for this to be over.
Amen. Me too. I love what you're saying there, just being really discerning and wise about what you're writing and saying. There are a lot of voices out there. And so one of the first books that you wrote was Beautiful Battlefields. And I remember hearing about this book from a client, actually, who was going through some really difficult pain in her own story. And we were talking and processing her pain through your story in your own books. Tell us a little bit about that book and how you what led you to writing Beautiful Battlefields.
Yeah, I was married for 30 years to the first love of my life. And we got married when we were really young. And he was always strong and healthy our whole lives until 2010, when he started having some really weird muscle things happening. And through a long process of testing and all kinds of difficult, things, we came down to a diagnosis of ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. And so at that point, we knew that he had 3 to 5 years to live, probably. And we had to really decide how we were going to fight that battle. And if we would let that battle reduce us and make us less than we were before, or more bitter, or more frustrated at God, or more frustrated at each other, or if we would let it make us more beautiful. And so I wouldn't say that I came out of it stronger. I don't know, maybe I would. But definitely more aware of the beauty all around me than I ever was before we encountered that giant Goliath. And so he did live for another 4.5 years and died in 2015. And Beautiful Battlefields is the story of that journey up until about year 2 of ALS.
Wow. Bo, and you have children, correct? How old were your kids at the time?
I have 4 kids, and my youngest was 11, and my oldest was 13 years older than that. I don't do math, so I guess 24.
We're following.
We're going to say around 24 and hope that that's okay. But yeah, 11 and 24, and that was, of course, one of our primary concerns is how do we get them and their theology through this unscathed. And I don't know actually anymore that I would say unscathed is ever the goal. Now I think we got them through, and their theology was wrestled with and battle scarred and proven and tested and in the trenches. And so I think that they came out of that also more beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're pointing out that there's not a way to get through this kind of pain in our stories unscathed. Like that's just a part of the journey, and yet they're more beautiful because of it. What do you feel like is the main principle or the main vision you had in writing Beautiful Battlefields? What did you want your readers to capture from that you're this part of your journey?
I really wanted people to understand that the philosophy that we've often used about, I don't want to call it theology because it isn't true of the character of God, but we also often have this philosophy in Christendom that if we follow God and if we do it right, things will go right. And when things go
Mm-hmm.
wrong in other people's lives, I was really good at looking for the cause. What did they do? How did they end up sailing that ship into those stormy seas? And it gave me comfort if I could see a reason why that they had ended up in that bad situation. It gave me comfort that I could avoid it. And really, suffering, I don't think was ever meant to be avoided. We follow the King of the Kingdom who died on a cross. It's the centerpiece of our
Mm-hmm.
faith. And yet somehow we believe that following him means we can swerve around that. So I have to believe in the providence of a good God. If he wants suffering and has let suffering be a part of our lives, he must know there's something to be gained inside of that. I don't believe that he causes suffering or that the growth that we encounter in it isn't even trade. Like, it's not like because I found this beauty in battle, it made the battle with ALS worth it. It's not like that. It's not a one for one. It's standalone beauty, though. It's what we can see him doing in our lives in the middle of the muck, in the middle of the stuff we wish we could have avoided. Even when the storm hits our house, we know it can stand. That doesn't mean the storm doesn't hit. So, helping people discover what is the beauty in the battle that you're facing. There is pain there too, and we acknowledge the pain and we honor it, and it is valid and legitimate. But what is the beauty? Because at least that's something to hold on to in the midst of a really difficult time.
And we need that hope, don't we? It's not just offered at the front. I love how you started with identifying that people are in pain, and that separating truth in terms of who God is and what He may be doing. I like the fact that you use that some of that tentative language of it's a mystery in some respects. It can't be explained away, but somehow He's doing something beautiful if you believe in His goodness, and He's not authoring this for hurt. So I thank you
Yeah.
for the way that you modeled that and just how you said it right there. I'd like to hear a little bit more about theology. And you've on the homepage, you say we're a group of women who have come together to create a community for all women who agree on one thing: women matter. Amen. But tell us a little bit more about the heartbeat of this resource.
Yeah, I love theology, especially because I feel like I feel really passionate in my older years now about not just doing the writing and speaking, but helping give voices that are not being heard a platform. There's so many good writers out there who nobody's reading, and I want women to have equity in their world. We shout a lot about equality, and when I really think about it, I'm not quite sure how far equality gets me down the road. When people ask me, don't you want to be equal to men? I often will say, which one? Because I mean, some of them, I don't know if I want to consider myself equal there. Some of them, I think they can just be their own person, and I'm going to be over here. But I think equity is a different story. Like, if you're an owner, you can remodel the house and you can make it look the way you want. But if you're a renter, you just stay the night in a hotel. You're not going to make any changes there. Somebody else owns that property. Do all the tenants have equality? Yes. Do they have equity? No. And so I really want to see women have equity in their world, meaning that they can stake their flag in a piece of ground and say, I own this. I have lived to tell the tale of how God moves in the broken places, how God moves when you lose a child, how God's there when you are rejected, how God's there when you don't get the promotion, how God's there in all of life. And I own this piece of my faith, and I own this piece of my world, and I have some agency over where it goes from here. And so to me, that's what I want to see women really fight for, is that they have ownership in their world. They even have ownership of their own pain, and they have ownership of their own story, and they're they're the only ones who can tell it with truth and honesty and beauty. So that's really what we strive for in Sheology, is to create voices that can tell their story in a way that is authentic and also hits the heart of a world that's really dying to hear about the grace of Jesus.
I love that, and similar heartbeat for us as we are passionate about helping these young girls find their voice, and moms raising courageous girls. And so much that resonate there. I love that analogy of the owner versus the tenant, and being able to give women a chance to have ownership and a say, decisions, a sense of healthy power that God gives. Bo, you really are a leader of leaders and are doing so many amazing things. But one of the passions that I have heard you speak on, and it comes a little bit, it sounds like, from your story, but you have a real passion for single moms. We'd love to know a little bit more about your own journey as a single mom and the ways that you feel called to shepherd single moms, maybe offering some wisdom for those that are listening that are in that same boat.
Yeah, that was a big part of my story, and I never saw it coming. And I think most single moms don't, that's not generally their plan. And so you find yourself in these unexpected waters. And I think so much of our success depends on what we do in unexpected waters. I mean, and even our survival depends on that. And so when I found myself raising my kids alone, my husband was pretty sick for 4 years. He was really encouraging, but he wasn't able to be much of a participant in the parenting during that time. And then he's been gone now 5 years. And so in that time, it's been this process of really learning to understand what it means to be partnered with Jesus and with my community, being willing to take help from both, being willing to lean entirely on Jesus, but also receive from the people around me who wanted to help and wanted to be a part of it, and being willing to let some of the pride go was really, really important to me. And so I see single moms making quick decisions, especially about who to share their life with, because they're exhausted and lonely and sometimes really struggling financially. And it is easy to try to marry a lifeboat. But if in the season of singleness, we can really look at the power of the Holy Spirit in our life as active and real and true and providential and provisional, I think we can position ourselves to be able to, for all the next relationships in our lives, to be stronger and better and healthy, rather than the kinds of relationships that end up destroying families in the long run.
So good. So much powerful principles in that. Just thinking about how quickly single moms, just out of, again, the exhaustion, and marrying a lifeboat and realizing that's really not the lifeboat they really needed in the end. So good. I love that reminder too. I think it applies to everyone, but of receiving that love from Jesus and from our community. And it sounds like you're saying, pride can stand in the way. Often I've heard from single moms, and actually just, I think, people in general, but that guilty feeling, the feeling of I'm too much of a burden, it's too hard to ask for help because everybody has their own needs. Would you speak to that a bit for that single parent who's feeling like they have real needs, but it just is triggering a lot of guilt?
Yeah. I think one thing to speak to first maybe is some of the things that cause single moms to feel that way, not exclusively, but some ways we can help with that as a community who love them, single moms and single dads, is to really show up in ways that matter. I had some people offer to spend time with my son, who was just 15 when his dad died, and they are well-meaning and wonderful, busy men, but they just didn't follow through with it. And I understand it, but it sends a really strong signal both to the mom and to the kid when somebody promises something and doesn't show up, that really their needs are in the way. And so I think that's really important to the broader community. Also, it's so helpful if people are willing to make specific offers rather than just say, call me if you need anything. call me if you need anything is something like you do that with a best friend, someone you can call anytime, day or night, but there aren't very many people like that. But in the broader, especially in the church, if we can say things like, I'm going to bring you dinner this week, does Tuesday or Wednesday work best? I want to get you a gift card, where would you like that to be to? I mean, just let people answer those kinds of questions rather than making them make all the asks in the relationship. And then just one more thing is that I think I hear more often than almost anything from divorced women that it's a lot easier for the church to support widowed women than it is divorced women. I think we have this perception that maybe they don't need as much help, or they aren't as grief stricken, or they maybe deserve to be there. And I think it's really important that we look at all the divorced individuals in our church as needing the same sort of care. So having said that, for single women, single men who are navigating this road with trying to raise kids and trying to do it on their own, the guilt is counterproductive in every way. It really doesn't help. And guilt over, I don't want to ask for help with my finances, can so easily lead to shame over the fact that I don't have enough money, or that I'm never going to make enough, or that I'm, whatever. So it is really important to identify and isolate feelings of guilt and say, is this thought from God? Is this something that God wants me to feel in this moment? Or is this an assignment from the enemy or mental baggage that I'm carrying because I prefer to stay in this sort of victim-y place? And how can I offload it? And I think mostly the way we offload it is by taking thoughts captive and saying, I'm going to be willing to receive the resources that Jesus has so generously offered me. It's hard, but I can do hard things. And so it's this kind of process of keeping our thoughts in alignment with the will of God and the truth of His word and His way. If He has provided a community around us, we get to partake of that. And then at some point, we will also be the community offering that kind of help to someone else. And we'll be so glad that they're willing to take it.
The journey of being a single parent is hard. Bo, my mom did that for 14 years when I was in middle school, through high school, and through college, and into young adulthood. And I remember what that felt like as a kid, and watching her. She at one point carried 3 jobs, and was working so hard to try to create as little interruptions to our lives, my brother, my sister, and I. And they're younger. And so just much respect and appreciation for what you shared about, so practically, how others in the community can actually practically be helpful, can actually be loving, and step in and towards meeting needs. And those aren't the only needs in the community, but they're significant. And thank you for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and shifting a little bit from focus on single mamas to advice that you might give moms in any stage of their journey. So she's a grandma now, or mom of teens or littles. She's a single mom. I mean, all of these. What would you say? She longs to be a mom, but is struggling with maybe fertility. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios there for moms, and speak to the mom's heart right there.
I think that this is just current in my life right now. What I'm walking through is that I think most of my legacy will come down to not what I write or speak or teach or how I lead. It will come down to what I do with the love that I give and receive, and the pain that I give and receive. And being willing to deal honestly with both of those issues with my kids has been a game changer. Being willing to say, I just did this last year, sat down with each of my 4 kids after a long time with Jesus, asking Him the questions first. And I just said, here are the places where I think I caused pain in your life. I need you to know it wasn't intentional. And I need you to know I'm not looking for absolution. I just want to sit here with you and honor this moment. And you tell me whatever you need to tell me right now. And I just needed to get all of these things out with each one of them. I want to know that when I get down the road that I have handled the pain that I've given with the right kind of respect. And then I want to be able to sit down and handle the pain that I've received with the right kind of respect. And so I think sometimes we get so busy and so like, I'm trying to do my best, and my kids need to understand I'm trying to do my best. And I don't want to feel guilty, and I don't want to feel shame. So I just rather push that under the rug. But I've seen such tremendous growth in relationships when people are willing to say, let's together meet on this same broken ground. And we're not going to try to fix it. I just want to acknowledge that in the course of our lives, we hurt each other, but we love each other. And this is the commitment of my relationship to you, that I will step up and say, I own the pain that I caused. And I know that sometimes it's really hard for moms to hear, and not everyone is ready even to hear that. But I am telling you, it has made a giant difference in my relationship with my kids, my relationship with everyone. Just being willing to say, this is going to be my legacy, what I do with love and what I do with pain. And I want to handle those two things really, really carefully, because they're both equally sacred.
Profound, Bo. So good. So good. There are just so many things that you are sharing today that I know our audience would say, I want more. So I have two places that you can find Bo. One is at Encourage Gathering this summer. She is going to be sharing more if you want to come hear her speak. So the encouragegathering.com. Bo, where else can people find you if they want to check out your resources, your books, or connect with you?
Yeah, all my books are on Amazon, and I have a pretty active social media community on Facebook and Instagram, and I speak at Westside Church once a month, and so my sermons are always up on the website there, and sheology.co is another place.
Well, I hope that you'll stick around. We've got more that we want to hear from you, and just thank you so much. I just want to end with that the legacy will be what we do with our love and what we do with pain, the love we give and receive and the pain that we give and receive. And so it's pretty profound. And for those of us listening who are parents, maybe ending with a prayerful ask of God to search you, to search us, and see if there's anything in there, any wicked, anxious way in us, and to lead us in the way everlasting, and starting with ownership with our kids. And that can look like actually when they're 5 and being able to come to them. But I can imagine how profound that is for your adult children, to be able to have that time to tell you with their adult perspectives how they have been hurt by, and that you would sit and just grieve with them and hear them out. So Bo, thank you for that example. And we look forward to part 2. Stick with us, subscribe to the Living Wholehearted podcast. And we are so grateful that you're on this journey of living with integrity and growing and shrinking the integrity gap. Thank you for joining us in being a leader committed to shrinking the integrity gap between the values we espouse and the values we actually live out in practice.